When I got deployed, I left the keys to my life with the one man I thought I could trust blindly, my dad. But the deployment salary hitting my account wasn't just numbers on a screen. It was earned in sweat, dirt, and miles away from home. I never expected my stepmother to look at my military service as her personal lottery ticket. I stood in my dad's kitchen, watching him break into a cold sweat as the reality of her betrayal finally unraveled right in front of him. "Do you know why the Army pays me?" I stared him dead in the eye, my voice as cold as ice. "Tell your wife to stop talking about my money. It's mine, not hers. She needs to know her place. If she crosses that line again, I won't be polite. Do you understand? Follow my journey to the end, and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has reached. The day I came back changed everything. My name is Charlotte, and at 35 years old, I've learned that the hardest battles aren't always fought on foreign soil. Sometimes, the real ambush happens right in your own childhood home, orchestrated by the people you trusted to guard your back. I spent over a decade serving my country, climbing the ranks with a dedication that left little room for a civilian life. Because of that, my dad, Richard, was my absolute anchor. We had a bond forged in the years after my mother passed away, a quiet understanding that we would always look out for one another. But that bond was put to the test when Victoria entered the picture. Victoria became my stepmother 5 years ago, bringing along an expensive taste for designer clothes and an insatiable desire for a luxury lifestyle she couldn't afford. From day one, she viewed my military career with a strange, passive-aggressive resentment, disguised as synthetic concern. When I received my deployment orders for an intense 10-month overseas tour, I knew I needed to secure my life back home. I owned a small property that required ongoing upkeep, so Dad and I sat down to make a practical arrangement. We opened a joint bank account, intended strictly for emergency maintenance on my house. I trusted my dad completely, knowing he'd only touch it if a pipe burst or the roof leaked. I packed my gear, said my goodbyes, and deployed, completely blind to the fact that I was leaving the keys to my hard-earned combat pay directly in Victoria's greedy hands. Life on a military deployment is a grueling test of endurance. My days were swallowed by intense operational routines, scorching dust, and the constant, heavy weight of active duty responsibilities. Out there, your mind is entirely focused on the mission and keeping your team safe, leaving very little energy for anything else. But about 3 months into my tour, a strange feeling began to settle in my stomach during a rare moment of downtime. I finally had a secure internet connection to check my financial notifications, and that's when I noticed the first discrepancy. It was a minor withdrawal from the joint account, just $200. I didn't panic at first. I simply assumed my dad had encountered a minor issue at my house, perhaps an emergency plumbing fix or a routine lawn contractor fee. But over the next few weeks, the small trickles turned into a steady, silent drain. $400 here, $700 there, disappearing consistently right after my hazardous duty and active duty paychecks hit the account. Whenever I managed to get a satellite phone connection to call home, Victoria was always the one who answered. Her voice would instantly drip with that familiar, synthetic concern, asking endless questions about my safety while completely monopolizing the conversation. Whenever I tried to bring up the unusual financial shifts or asked to speak directly with my dad, she would smoothly brush it off, claiming he was out running errands or resting. She kept him completely isolated from the phone lines, leaving me thousands of miles away, isolated in the dirt, watching my hard-earned savings evaporate into thin air. The red flags were piling up too fast to ignore. Unable to shake the knot in my stomach, I waited until my shift ended and managed to secure a spot on a high-speed, secure military computer in the base operations tent. My heart hammered against my ribs as I logged directly into my bank portal to pull up the comprehensive itemized transaction history. I expected to see alerts from local hardware stores, roofing contractors, or utility companies. Instead, the raw transactions painted a completely different, horrifying picture. My hard-earned deployment funds weren't guarding my home at all. They were funding a life of absolute luxury miles away from my property. The transaction logs showed consistent high-end withdrawals at upscale fashion boutiques, luxury day spas, and five-star restaurants. The most devastating blow was a recurring, large monthly debit flagged as a luxury car payment, a vehicle I knew my dad would never buy for himself. It became instantly undeniable. Victoria had treated my combat pay as her personal, bottomless lottery ticket. She was systematically draining my account to finance a lavish lifestyle, completely abusing the trust I placed in my family. The worst part was her calculated deception. She was intentionally keeping my dad in the dark, gaslighting him into believing that her sudden influx of expensive designer items and new luxury rides were coming from her own secret savings or vague consulting work. She thought because I was stationed thousands of miles away in a conflict zone, I was completely blind to her greed. But she had left a digital footprint, and I spent the rest of my night pulling up every single receipt on my screen, ready to turn her stolen paradise into a total war zone. The moment my boots touched the tarmac back home, I didn't call for a ride, and I didn't send a warning text. I caught a cab straight to my dad's house, my duffel bag slung over my shoulder and the complete digital history of the transactions downloaded directly onto my phone, ready to show the proof. I bypassed the front door, walking around the side to enter through the kitchen, knowing exactly where my dad would be at that hour. As I stepped inside, the screen door clicked shut, snapping the heavy silence. My dad turned around from the counter, his eyes widening in absolute shock and relief at the sudden sight of his daughter back from war. But before he could even step forward to pull me into a welcoming hug, I opened the bank portal on my device and placed the screen on the kitchen table right between us. He froze, looking down at the endless rows of luxury boutique charges and car payments, then back up at my rigid posture. The complete confusion on his face quickly melted away into sheer horror as the devastating reality of his wife's betrayal finally unraveled right in front of him. I watched him break into a visible, cold sweat, his breath catching as the sheer weight of the stolen thousands sunk in. "Do you know why the army pays me?" I stared him dead in the eye, my voice matching the cold, unyielding tone of a commanding officer. "Tell your wife to stop talking about my money. It's mine, not hers. She needs to know her place. If she crosses that line again, I won't be polite. Do you understand?" Before my dad could even find his voice to reply, the heavy oak door swung open, and Victoria stepped into the kitchen. She was wearing a brand new designer silk robe, holding a luxury shopping bag, completely oblivious to the storm that had just gathered in her home. But the moment her eyes adjusted and landed on the bank dashboard displayed clearly on the table, the color instantly drained from her perfectly made-up face. She realized the game was completely up. Instead of breaking down or apologizing, her expression quickly shifted into a mask of pure defiance. She sneered, instantly trying to weaponize the family narrative to save herself. "Oh, please, Charlotte," she scoffed, her voice dripping with synthetic offense. "You leave your life behind for nearly a year and expect everyone else to do the heavy lifting for free? I manage this household and I look after your father. Consider those withdrawals a completely justified management fee for keeping your affairs in order while you were gone." When she saw that her logic wasn't working on my rigid, unyielding posture, she immediately turned her sights on my dad. Tears welled up in her eyes with theatrical precision as she grabbed his arm, trying to manipulate him into taking her side. She sobbed dramatically, buried her face in his shoulder, and began accusing me of being cold, selfish, and unnecessarily aggressive. "Richard, look at how she's attacking me," she wailed. Her time in the service has made her completely unhinged and hostile. She's bringing that military attitude into our peaceful home and trying to destroy our marriage over a simple family misunderstanding." She squeezed his arm tighter, desperately hoping her tears would mask the cold, hard proof of her greed sitting right there on the screen. Victoria stood there, smirking behind her fake tears, completely confident that her dramatic performance would force my dad to smooth things over. She truly believed she could talk her way out of grand larceny just by calling it a family misunderstanding. But as I looked at her smug face, a cold smile spread across my own. She had absolutely no idea who she was dealing with. I didn't just spend my deployment learning how to fight. I spent the weeks before I left planning for every possible vulnerability. Knowing Victoria's greedy habits and her history of eyeing my achievements, I had taken a crucial protective measure. Before deploying, I had sat down with a military legal assistance officer to build a foolproof safeguard directly into that joint account structure. "You think you just took some pocket change, Victoria?" I said, my voice cutting through her theatrical sobbing like a knife. I pulled up the certified legal terms of the account on my device and held it up to her. "When Dad and I set up this account, we included a strict, legally binding residential protection clause. The terms were absolute. Any unauthorized non-residential withdrawal automatically triggers an immediate, automated fraud alert to both the bank's compliance division and the major credit bureaus." Victoria's breath hitched, her fake tears instantly drying up as the gravity of my words began to sink in. "You didn't just steal my hazardous duty pay," I continued, stepping closer. "By using my active duty income and signature to clear those high-end transactions and verify that new luxury car loan, you committed federal bank fraud. The system flagged your name the second the patterns crossed the line. Your credit score is already completely tanked. The bank has officially opened a criminal fraud investigation against you, and that brand new Mercedes sitting out in the driveway? The financing has been flagged as fraudulent, and the repossession order was authorized this morning. You didn't inherit a lottery ticket, Victoria. You walked right into a trap." The trap had closed, and there was no escaping it. Faced with active fraud charges and the immediate repossession of her luxury lifestyle, Victoria's arrogance completely shattered. My dad stood his ground, refusing to let her tears blind him any longer. He gave her a final choice: face immediate military and civil prosecution, or legally sign over her personal assets and separate bank holdings to repay every single dime she stole from me. Defeated, she signed the repayment agreement that very week, and my dad immediately filed for legal separation. Today, I'm fully back home, using my hard-earned deployment money to completely renovate my property into the peaceful sanctuary it was always meant to be. Victoria's luxury ride is gone, and she is learning the hard way that greed always comes with a price. Now, I'm curious about you who listened to my journey. What would you have done if your own family crossed the line with your hard-earned income? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.